Good evening. Thank you for coming. Welcome to the monthly lecture hosted by the Rhinebeck Historical Society. My name is Diana DePardominski, and I'm the most recent member of the Board of Trustees. Now, there's also another vacant seat on the board right now, so if you're interested in joining, I think almost everybody knows Mike. Speak to Mike Frazier afterwards.
What's the salary?
Just doubled it.
Yeah, 0 times 0 always equals 0. Okay, so before tonight's featured attraction, 200 years of fashion preserved at Wilderstein, comes the preview for next month's event, which I can see one of the speakers, I think, moved. Okay, so next month's event is envision to the south of Wilderstein a horse. Because next month, on Friday, May 30th at 7 p.m. in this same space, Susie Williams and Eve Dambra will present Southland's past and present. So now, please remove the horse from your imagination. Though, a little further on tonight, we will see a halter for a very fashionable horse. Am I audible? Oh, okay. So again, the horse is gone, but we will see a halter for a fashionable horse because everybody who partook in Wilderstein was very fashionable. So this evening's talk, and we're very pleased to present, and very grateful to Linda and Duane Watson for sharing their expertise on 200 years of fashion preserved at Wilderstein Historic Site. This rare collection that we're going to see tonight teaches us not only about shifting styles in clothing, but it also teaches us about shifting activities in Rhinebeck. Before managing and curating the collections at Wilderstein, Linda and Duane, while teaching, which is incredible for us in the teaching profession, pursued master's degrees in library science at the University of Albany. Next, as Linda continued to hone her teaching skills in the classroom, Duane received a degree in preservation at Columbia University before becoming the chief librarian for preservation at New York Public Library, which is one of the richest research libraries in this country. And they also have fabulous exhibitions of parts of their collection, which I strongly recommend. Now, in my personal experience, Linda and Duane exemplify intellectual depth and academic generosity. For nearly 20 years, they not only welcomed my classes to Wilderstein, but they also assisted my students with research projects and trained them as interns, thereby building a foundation for 21st century professionals in preservation and in the stewardship of material culture. And for that, I'm most grateful to you, and so were my students. So, may everybody please join me in welcoming Linda and Duane as they present 200 years of fashion at Wilderstein.
I might as well start like this so that you'll see how crazy I can be. Thank you, Diana. We're very pleased to be here, share with you some of the Wilderstein collection. And for all of you who are here, we really appreciate this opportunity to meet with you this evening. Tonight we will explore the 200 years of fashion preserved at Wilderstein. We'll take you behind the scenes to discover some of the 2,000 pieces of clothing and clothing elements saved over several generations. These garments were kept in dresser drawers and closets, but especially in boxes and trunks in the Wilderstein attic. Advice on how to process the collection was generously given by professionals in textile conservation. Volunteers, of whom we have many and have had many volunteers, continued the process following their guidelines. I don't know who owned every piece of clothing, but some trunks and boxes were marked with a person's or a family's name. Each piece of clothing was vacuumed, described, measured, photographed, labeled, and entered into the database. Appropriate storage followed. Let's begin with family history. Linda?
Well, tonight we'll refer to 5 generations shown on the screen, beginning in the 18th century. First generation, Phoebe Carman, married John Rutson, a son of Alida Livingston, in 1767. He died 6 years later, and in 1779, she married Robert Sands. Phoebe and John Rutson had 2 daughters, Catherine and Sarah. Sarah became Mrs. Philip Jeremiah Schuyler, but that's another story. Catherine married George Suckley. Phoebe and Robert Sands, her second husband, had 5 children. One of them, Grace, married John Rodman Bound. Their daughter, Catherine Murray Bound, married Thomas Holy Suckley, the youngest son of George and Catherine. So back to the first generation for a moment. Phoebe Carman Rutson Sands was grandmother to both Thomas and Catherine. But the grandfathers, of course, were different. Their marriage produced Robert Bound Suckley and 2 siblings. He married Bessie, or Elizabeth, Montgomery, and they had 7 children. Rutson, Harry, Robin, Arthur, Margaret, often called Daisy, and the twins, Elizabeth and Catherine, 6 of whom reached adulthood.
Here we see portraits of George and Catherine given to each other during their courtship. George was migrated from Sheffield, England in 1784 and met and married Catherine Rutson of Rhinebeck, a very wealthy young woman. After her mother married Robert Sands, Catherine lived with her mother and stepfather at the homestead, often referred to as the Sands house. George and Catherine were married at the homestead by the Reverend Freeborn Garrison and their friend and fellow Methodist, and the husband of Catherine Livingston Garrison, Catherine Rutson's cousin. Photographed here in one of the Wilderstein bedrooms of a later era is a green silk quilt with dark green satin borders made for the 1799 wedding. Here is a detail of the center of the quilt. It is quilted in a diamond pattern, 6 stitches per inch. Notice the very fine and even stitching on the quilt. It's entirely hand-sewn by Catherine, her sister Sarah Rutson Schuyler, and their mother, whose names or initials are added in orange thread. You see Rhinebeck, C. Rutson, 1799. Catherine's wedding shoes, made of soft cream color leather, feature a low heel and beading on the toe. The shoes were purchased from a shoemaker in Maiden Lane in New York City, whose paper label is pasted on the burlap sole inside the shoe. Catherine traveled back and forth between the homestead in Rhinebeck to visit her mother and lower Manhattan, or Greenwich, where she and George lived. Maiden Lane was a very popular shopping street at the time. It was the first to get gas lighting and the center of the jewelry district. Today, South Seaport is located near the east end of this east-west street. And now,
Catherine and George's youngest son, Thomas Holy Suckley, married Catherine Murray Bown of Rhinebeck. Here we have a daguerreotype of Thomas and a tinted photograph on milk glass of Catherine. Catherine's family lived at the Branch, property near the intersection of 9G and 308. They married in 1850, and in 1852, Thomas and Catherine built a house, an Italianate villa designed by John Warren Rich. You see his drawing there. Along the Hudson River, where Wilderstein now stands. John Warren Rich's architectural drawing shows the east elevation of the two-story house, later expanded by Robert. The east elevation was the front of the house, where the front door was located and still is today. The romantic period in clothing was at its height in the 1830s. Dresses featured wide, round necklines, full sleeves with narrow cuffs, narrow waistlines, and full skirts, like this dark gold silk taffeta dress, which may have been worn by Catherine Murray Bown. In 1840, she was 17 years old. The dress was probably worn with a large collar, or fichu, a triangular scarf tied, pinned, or tucked in the front of the bodice. All the Bown sisters were interested in fashion. The Bown sisters subscribed to Godey's Ladies' Book, such as this one from 1861, which had many sketches of elegant dresses of the latest fashion. This silk day dress has a berry and floral motif and silk taffeta plaid trim on the sleeves.
by 1879, Thomas's wife and two of his children had died, leaving only Robert Bown Suckley. Robert and Bessie Montgomery decided to marry. She was the daughter of Margaret Augusta Lynch, whose family owned Glenburn, and the Reverend Henry Eglinton Montgomery of Philadelphia. He was the rector of the Church of the Incarnation on Madison Avenue, New York City. He died in 1874, leaving Bessie's widowed mother with 4 unmarried girls among her 9 children. She was being very careful to find good husbands. She knew Robert was a good catch, but wanted to be sure about his means. Here is a portrait of Bessie's mother, painted by Castelier Cole. She wrote to Robert and said, quote, "It will be impossible for me to name the date for the wedding until something is definitely arranged. I could not think of allowing you to assume these new responsibilities while you are still subject to the, shall I say it, caprice of your father, although I would not for a moment doubt his generous intentions." It's clear that Thomas was a very generous man, and the wedding did take place in October. The bride wore this lovely ivory silk gown with its 18-inch waist and very full and heavy skirt.
This claret color velvet and lace 2-piece gown came not from the Suckleys, but from the Morse family. Bessie Suckley was a lifelong friend of Elizabeth Morse, called Lily, and her sister, Mary. They were the grandnieces of Samuel F.B. Morse of Locust Grove. After Mary's death, Lily gave the 1880s dress to Daisy in 1938. Perhaps she thought she could have it altered to suit her. On the right is the box in which it was found, an example of a problem in old houses. The critters find a way in through chipped boards and broken windows. The pigeons loved the attic and the tower, places seldom visited by the elderly humans living in the house. By closing up the holes and replacing the windows, it is now a much more secure place. The velvet dress now lives in an acid-free box, swaddled in acid-free tissue. White gloves are used to handle all clothing and textiles, to protect them from all the acids and oils that gather on everyone's hands. Processing the clothing took about 3 years. Bessie enjoyed clothes too, and she kept the dressmakers in New York, Dutchess County, and Europe busy. Most of the clothing bought by Bessie at this time was made by private dressmakers, so there are no labels. She may have worn this wool teal day dress on her 2-year honeymoon in Switzerland, or perhaps she had it made there. In this close-up of the bodice, the large leg of mutton sleeves and the decorative beading are quite apparent. Now, fashion has its own language, and we gathered some definitions from the textile experts, which we are not. On the screen, the dress is described as a wool ottoman. Ottoman is a width-ways ribbed fabric. In other words, ribs going like that across the fabric. The name comes from a luxurious silk fabric woven in Turkey during the Ottoman Empire. It can be made of wool or silk or manufactured fibers. So in layman's term, this is a wool fabric with horizontal ribs. The mannequin wears the same teal dress as travel preparations are being made. In 1897, the family, Robert and Bessie, and 6 children, accompanied by 2 of Bessie's sisters and 2 nannies, sailed to Europe, where the family lived for the next 10 years in Switzerland.
In 1888, Robert's father Thomas died, and Robert expanded the family home to its current Queen Anne style. It features many stained glass windows. The 5 windows in the dining room depict the coats of arms of family ancestors: the Chews, Livingston, Tillotson, and Lynch. And this one with a cross and a deer, which Robert designed himself to represent the Suckley family. Robert added a carriage house currently being restored. The horses were housed in comfort and elegantly decked out. Note the 2 silver running deer on the harness, part of the coat of arms that Robert designed for himself. Driving the carriage or sleigh could be a chilly business, so here we have a black wool, double-breasted coach's coat, front and back. When the Suckleys returned from Europe in 1907, cars were the thing, and the carriage house became the garage. But horses were not obsolete. We just cataloged some 1914 bills from Fraley's in Rhinebeck for transportation to church and back with horse and surrey, or when there was snow, horse and sleigh. The cost, $2 round trip. Here we have more intimate menswear shown in one of the bedrooms of Wilderstein. The cotton union suit bears the label patented January 5th, 1909. The union suit was also known as a combination, boxer-type shorts and an undershirt in one garment. It is 43 inches long, with a 39-inch waist, and closes with 7 mother-of-pearl buttons. The waist of the second one, the drawers, can be adjusted by drawstrings, and the cotton undershirt opens from neck to hem with 5 buttons. On the left is a man's sock garter. There is a buckle to adjust the size to fit any leg. It closes with a hook and eye, and a garter hangs down to hold up the sock. On the right is a selection of men's collars. In a household with Robert and 3 adult sons, there are many heavily starched collars to be kept clean. The volunteers who sewed the collection label on each collar thought they were endless.
And for the ladies, a ladies' union suit, or combination. Note the little bow on the neckline. That's how you know it's for the ladies. There are also other versions which cover arms and legs for winter. We discovered that the union suit was originally made for women, not men, in the 19th century. to free them from restrictive garments like corsets and petticoats. Combining the top and bottom into one piece provided greater comfort and freedom of movement. The popularity of the union suit spread to men, who soon demanded their own. The union suit, created in Utica, New York, was patented in 1868 as emancipation under flannel. We wondered why the collection didn't contain corsets, but women had already moved on. The Victorian era, 1837 to 1901, was noted for extravagant and dramatic fashion, such as this two-piece black silk file gown with ivory satin inserts. Now, file refers to a soft woven fabric having a ribbed texture. Just by the way, it's pronounced file here and fail in the UK. It features an hourglass figure, full skirt, small leg of mutton sleeves, and is embellished with black lace and jet beads. Most dresses of this era are two-piece, often with a sash worn around the waist. This dress is of silk moire, moire being a ribbed fabric embossed with a watermark pattern, giving it a rippled appearance. So this lilac silk moire dress for dancing is from the Edwardian era, early 20th century. It has three-quarter length pleated sleeves, a small bustle and train in back, and a cummerbund to encircle the waist. The Edwardian style is softer and more relaxed than the earlier Victorian clothing. Bessie is ready for the ball.
Wow.
Maybe in New York City, or at the home of one of the River families, the Astors or the Rogers of Hyde Park. This silk ottoman gown, adorned with glass and pearl encrusted tulle or a soft netting, could be worn with these long ivory silk gloves embroidered with floral elements in silk floss or embroidery thread. There are 3 silk-covered snaps at the wrist.
While Bessie dresses, Robert is getting ready in his recently restored bedroom. He has laid out his full dress, tuxedo with tails, white shirt to which he will attach a heavily starched collar, and his top hat to match Bessie's outfit. He probably won't be allowed to take the golf clubs, though. Robert would have worn similar attire when Bessie chose this elegant outfit, shown here in her recently restored bedroom. The two-piece black dress is made of watered silk, a fabric with a wavery finish, and features jet beading at the neck above a cream-colored insert down the front of the bodice. Pretty good for a man, you know, to say that. I got trained.
As the Suckley children became young adults, they would join their Montgomery cousins at the beach at Monteloking, New Jersey. This blue wool bathing suit is a three-piece outfit with dress, bloomers, and hat. Here in the photo is cousin Peg Montgomery's, seated on the left. In the background are the summer rental cottages. The two-piece John Wanamaker suit for men is also made of wool. Men's bathing wear required less material than women's. As in many pieces of clothing and textiles in the Suckley household, inside the suit is a laundry label, S-7, so it would be returned to the correct family. A tennis court was added to Wilderstein in 1912. In the photo, Arthur Suckley is second man from the left. White wool trousers, such as these, were often worn for playing tennis. Proper attire for the lady players included long skirts and high-necked blouses, as worn by the woman serving on the right. On the left is an earlier interesting use of tennis rackets as photo props. Bessie Montgomery, her sister Addie, friends Lily and Mary Morse dressed up and went to a studio to have this tintype taken. It's about 1880. They all hold tennis rackets with no sign of a tennis court.
Robert and his children all played golf. He was accomplished in many sports, including tennis, hiking, sailing, ice boating, and skiing. He rode his bike and recorded the distance and his time. His wool knickers and cap were appropriate for some of his activities. Most of the time, however, the men appear in three-piece suits like these two from 1914 and 1930. Even when sitting on the lawn playing with the dogs. Pictures with Wilderstein in the background from left to right are Catherine, Arthur with two dogs, Robert, and Robert Jr. Older son Henry Suckley's raccoon coat helped him keep him warm in France, where he went in 1915 as a volunteer ambulance driver and squadron leader. The coat is lined with muslin above the waist and wool below, and has quilted lining in the sleeves. Pictured here is Henry Suckley in his raccoon coat, standing beside the ambulance he drove. During World War I, Henry and his uncle Harry Montgomery raised money to purchase 25 ambulances built on Ford chassis. Neighbor Helen Morton donated an ambulance in Henry's memory. The American Ambulance Field Service served under the French Army and wore military uniforms. Brooks Brothers was a significant supplier of officers' uniforms, and Henry's military clothing has the Brooks Brothers label.
September 9th, 1918. at the wedding of Robert and Bessie's daughter, Elizabeth, or Betty. 2 younger cousins were enlisted for the wedding party, as most of the older men were involved in the war. From left to right, Eglinton Montgomery, son of Bessie's brother Harry, Gilbert Hambley, brother of the groom, Daisy, the groom, Littleton, Coleman, Fleming, Hambley, the bride, Betty, the bride's twin sister, Catherine, and Dudley Langdon, son of Bessie's sister, Sophie. They were married at the Church of the Messiah in Rhinebeck Village, and had a small reception here at Wilderstein. There was little time to prepare, since the groom had to have military leave to be married. The bridal attire was purchased off the rack at B. Altman. But military leave was not the only problem. According to Robert Suckleys' diary, on August 18th, Littleton arrived from Spartanburg, South Carolina, where he was stationed, and requested permission from Robert Suckley to become engaged to Betty. Robert gave his opinion on war brides. He was not in favor, because the groom might soon be sent abroad. But he promised an answer the next day, August 19th. Next day became August 31st, when Robert informed Littleton, "I cannot set the date until you send me the War Office decision as to your location next 12 months. September 2nd. Littleton wrote that he could not get assurance of remaining this side without going to Washington, and he could not get leave to do so. But later that same day, Robert telegraphed Littleton consenting to the September 9th wedding. That evening, Betty and her mother Bessie took the 5 p.m. train to town, New York City, to get wedding clothes. B. Altman and Company lists September 4 as the purchase date for that gown at $150 plus $10 labor and material. Robert noted in his diary that he gave Betty $1,000 to buy clothes, which Duane checked earlier, and it was
$3,000.
for the wedding gown at $150.
Yeah,
For the $1,000 was about
was
24, was it?
$34,000 would be equivalent today.
We can only imagine the pressure that was put on Robert to approve that September 9th wedding. Close up here of bridesmaid Daisy and her picture hat of cream color crepe, a fabric with a wrinkled surface, but it's lightweight. The hat lasted well throughout the years, but the feathers didn't fare so well. Music was important in the family's life. They all played an instrument and attended concerts. Bessie may have worn this black velvet and metallic gold silk coat to the Metropolitan Opera. It bears a Bergdorf Goodman label. And I think on the screen it says that it's a jacquard, which is a fabric with intricate variegated pattern, which they make by attaching cards to the loom, and sounds quite complicated. During the 1920s, clothing became more relaxed and comfortable. skirts were shorter, and the waistline dropped. This outfit has an orange bodice of crepe back satin. That's a reversible fabric with a satin finish on the top and underneath of the texture of crepe. So it's an orange bodice of crepe back satin and a navy wool skirt and a navy wool jacket, which reaches the knee. This two-piece ensemble suffered damage from another critter who likes to spend winter in the house. You know who? The mouse.
Yes.
However, to show this chiffon sheath dress on the right, the chewed area near the hip, I think you can see it's a little white on each hip, on both sides was repaired or replaced professionally with similar pleated chiffon. The repairs, however, are covered by the robe dress on the left with its metallic gold silkscreen print. And chiffon is almost a transparent cloth, as you can see there on the right. Bessie apparently chose to wear this black chiffon dress for her portrait in 1928 when she was 64 years old, and in 1930 at age 66. The neckline is outlined in crystal and metallic beading. Do you see the change made to the dress? And a modesty panel was added to the low scoop neckline. Maybe she or her children decided that over 65 one couldn't be quite so flashy. Right. This beautiful, full-skirted, royal blue silk velvet evening coat is from the atelier or workshop of Madame Vionnet, a French fashion designer best known as the pioneer of the bias cut. Bias cut being cutting diagonally against the grain. And they say that this created the figure-hugging, draped, but comfortable silhouette sought by Madame Vionnet. It may have belonged to Elizabeth Lynch, Bessie's cousin. She and her parents moved to their new home in Rhinebeck, Manzakening, in 1905. When she died in 1938, Daisy inherited half of her estate.
Photographed here are Daisy Suckley riding side saddle and an unidentified companion. Notice the two holes in her wool riding jacket, made by another enemy of preservation, the moth. We keep them under control with moth traps, usually 25 or 30 every 3 months, placed throughout the house and changed monthly. On another horse is Robert Suckley Jr., known as Robin. He is shown here in his fedora with a Stetson label. He spent the fall of 1912 in Montana, learning to ride the range and round up cattle. He appears to have loved it.
(1942). Laura Delano, called Polly, was first cousin to Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Daisy Suckley was a distant cousin. Sometimes they traveled around the country on the train with FDR. here reviewing troops at Camp Jackson in Columbia, South Carolina. They wear very similar short-sleeved navy dresses with white polka dots and bolero-style jackets. Daisy's diaries and her correspondence with FDR were edited by Jeffrey Ward in the book Closest Companion. The photograph used for the cover of the book shows FDR and Daisy on board the presidential yacht, the USS Potomac, on the Hudson River in March 1939. She is wearing this hat. In later years, in a simple cotton dress which buttons down the front, Daisy practices her backhand. She is standing on the porch at Wilderstein, where, at that time, the wisteria was allowed to grow wild, look beautiful, and damage the exterior of the house. Yes.
As we put on our hats and take our leave, here are a few selections of hats from the Wilderstein collection. A pink fur felt hat trimmed with 3 feathered birds, a black boater style straw hat, and a cream-colored straw with bell-shaped trim. There are 2 straw hats, one teal color decorated with artificial grapes, the other apricot decorated with flowers. Both have a label from Henri Bendel, West 57th Street, New York City. Ready for all occasions, each of the Suckleys men had these hats: a straw boater, a black felt derby, and a formal beaver top hat. We end tonight with Miss Margaret Lynch Suckley in her 100th year, sporting one of her preferred styles of cotton hats, and on the right, a few years earlier, in a similar hat while dressed in her pleated skirt and cardigan. She hoped that things at Wilderstein would be preserved and would surely be pleased that you are interested too. Thank you all.
Wow. So thank you for that meticulously curated presentation. For the sake of the camera, I'm going to repeat the questions that you ask for the sake of the microphone. So, ready for questions?
I hope so.
I'm sure you are. Anyway, that was an amazing presentation of an amazing collection. Yes?
How much of the clothing is on view?
How much
The
is on
public.
view permanently?
Actually, the clothing is not on view permanently. From time to time, we do have something in one of the rooms, say a dress in one of the bedrooms or something like that. But no, it's not. That's why we were happy to do this presentation tonight.
Mike?
How long, I was admiring so many of these pieces here. The Ottoman dress, for example, but it occurred to me it must take forever to get dressed.
So Mike is asking about how long it took the women to get dressed.
I was thinking that too when noticing that most of the dresses were two-piece, because otherwise to get into all that stuff in one piece would be very, very difficult.
Did they have to have somebody else helping them, or could they, can we assume they could do this by themselves? They look so complicated.
Again, Mike's asking about the complexity of dressing for women.
Something that I've learned from working, volunteering at Mills Mansion is that If you had buttons in the back of your outfit, that meant you had a lady's maid helping you. If you had buttons in the front, you were most likely a servant and you dressed yourself.
So the answer from a volunteer at Mills is that if the buttons are in the back of a woman's dress, that meant you had a servant. If they were in the front, you were doing it yourself.
It sounds reasonable, certainly. I'm not aware that Bessie Suckley had a lady's maid, but she did have some lovely clothing, so perhaps one of the parlor maids helped.
And where are the remaining family members?
The question is about any relatives that survive.
Actually, the last one died
2010.
2010, yeah.
And that was
Poppy, or Catherine Hambley.
Catherine Hamley.
Yeah. And she was living in the home that her parents had across the road from Wilderstein.
Right on Mill Road.
She was the last one.
What happened, the slide with the wedding and the story you told about how they had trouble, getting permission and all that? Did he get sent to Europe and did it have a happy ending?
So the question is, what was the fate in World War I of the bridegroom?
Okay, that was Betty, and they got married in 1918, so the war ended shortly after that. He did not get sent abroad,
Okay.
and they lived a long and happy life together, yes.
Okay,
Had 3 children.
wonderful.
Did I hear you correctly at the beginning that there are 2,000 items of clothing?
Yes, that's like, some of the pieces were used like a part of this, so that's counted, things like that. And then there are pieces where it appears that some of the family wanted to take it apart and do something with it, but they never finished. So then there are all the textile things are another story.
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing what you've done in terms of
Well,
thousands and thousands of objects. at
what we have
Wilderstein.
done
Yeah.
is really because we had people like you and others who have helped as our docents and as our archival people with us. It's been for us now 35 years together with all of you, and it never would have happened without our docents and volunteers.
One of the amazing things too is that the clothing is as well preserved as it is. You know, I guess because it was in the attic and trunks and such, and never touched.
Except by the critters.
Yeah, except by the critters.
Yeah. Well, they left their visitation there, the critters.
Yeah, they left it obvious.
Yeah. So, we've had a number of very wonderful interns from colleges. Some have gone on to PhDs and are working in various universities and important people. They've been a chance for us who are older to have them see the world as we see it and have seen it, but also how they see it ahead of time. So, at least in my opinion, this part of what we do at Wilderstein, or have done, is part of our responsibility for those who are working for the next part of our generation. We won't see it, but hopefully our people in our families will. It's a great thing.
So there are 2 questions in the back.
Yes, it's a question about the men's underwear. Can I ask, because I remember my father used to call that a BVD. Is
Okay.
that what
So the question is about the men's underwear. Was it called a BVD, the union suit you're referring to? The question is whether the union suit is equivalent to a BVD. I don't think so. Yeah, it was BVD was a brand.
I don't know.
They got it, it's a brand.
BVD is a brand
Yeah,
rather than a
but I don't know
style.
if we have any of them.
Something new to learn.
What year did you start the textiles preservation?
The textile preservation, I don't remember the exact year, before 2000.
Okay. So was Daisy still alive when you started?
No, very little was done while Daisy was still living there, except kind of watching out for her and some outside work, replacing windows, that type of thing. But it was her home still, so we had to be very careful.
Over time, did the family progressively live more in the lower stories as the upper stories became filled with the objects that now fill the collection?
Well, Daisy's bedroom was on the 3rd floor, and the last 10 years she lived on the 1st floor because she had broken her leg. And there wasn't much other family there. She did have a tenant, or sometimes one person living in a room, and they were upstairs, but they were much younger.
Okay. So it wasn't, the whole house was in use, more or less, for Daisy's life?
Well, I'd say the 1st floor was what was most used in the later years. Yeah. But it's not that the upstairs was closed.
There were some family members who would come in the summer, and so on the 2nd floor, a couple of them were already there for her. She was an amazing person, I think, and the family saved everything, and I mean everything, from the pins to all kinds of equipment and all this sort of stuff. I think we have around over 60,000 records of pieces of things, and we're still working on it. Somebody else is going to have a chance to do it.
Do you have a jewelry collection?
Yes, I don't think it's terribly significant, but yes, we do have the jewelry collection.
Yeah, it's not. Miss Suckley and her sisters often sold things at certain points because their financial situation was not good. So you see things like on the 3rd floor, banjo clock, because the clock is gone, but you still see the
outline of it.
Yeah, the outline of it. And we have a lot. She saved all the things that she sold and who bought them. So, which is very interesting. And that's been part of what's made a lot of our information there. You know, you find things that almost all the time. We find one thing here and another one there. And, it's kind of like going to Grandma's attic.
Is the collection currently at Wilderstein, and is it accessible by, is there like a database of it that can be searched, and can people view items on request for research and whatnot?
So did everybody hear the question is whether you can make an appointment to see some of the items in the collection?
You can make an appointment, certainly, to come in and look at the database that we have there. Part of the database is also online. It's called Past Perfect Online, and it's easily accessible through the Wilderstein website. If you just go to collections, and it gives a link. Not everything is on there by any means, but it's a nice start. But yes, you can come to Wilderstein by making an appointment to use the database there too.
Is there any plan to put some of the beautiful things on mannequins and have
have them around in the rooms when people come to visit?
At the current time, no, there is not a plan to do that.
That's a great idea.
But one of the things that's going to happen in the future is when the next phase of the carriage house is done, one whole, it's a 10,000 square foot area, and on one of the floors, on the second floor actually, we'll have much of the collection, or considerable amount of it. It's just too big for anywhere. But that way we could redo the things in the house in a different way than we are now, because it's like having one room for everything that you own, and there's no place for you.
Actually, we have had from time to time a mannequin in one of the bedrooms or something like that. We don't like to leave the clothes up too long because it's not all that good for them.
I have another marketing idea. I know that there's a great gift shop, and I was thinking those hats are kind of like common. If you bought some of those hats and put the plaid ribbon on it for a Suckleys hat, why not? We all need hats in the summer.
Well, thank you. This was a fabulous talk about a fabulous collection, fabulously presented. Thank you. And I think next month's talk by Susie Williams and Eve Danver will pick up nicely from here. We had a harness, we had riding attire, so it'll be a nice continuity as we travel to Southlands to learn about their history. Daisy, of course, had wonderful manners and was a very generous hostess. And so in keeping with her tradition, there are cookies out in the antechamber as you exit. So thank you for coming. Please come again. Thank you for the fabulous presentation.